Welcome to Megan and the Thunderdome, a Citizen Assembly meeting where we test ideas and hone debate skills in a real-life social political arena with the goal of holistic balance. If you'd like to participate, find out how in our podcast description. So let's begin with a round of introductions from our panelists. I will start us off. My name is Megan, and I am currently in San Antonio, Texas. And my fields of interest have to do primarily with restoring the family as the backbone of society. I'm also interested in proper education, homeschooling, and proper nutrition as well. I will now ask Stacey if she could introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Stacey Gustafson. I split my time between Northern Michigan and Southwest Texas, and my main focus is holistic community problem solving. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stacey. Ramses, would you please introduce yourself?
Sure, Megan. Hello, my name is Ramses. I'm joining from Montreal, Canada, and my main interests are logic and human rights.
Great, thank you, Ramses. Daniel Tweed, would you please introduce yourself?
Hey, gang. I'm Daniel Tweed. I'm a recurring candidate for City Council here in Thousand Oaks, California, and I'll be at the Rotary Club Street Fair on October 17th with a booth. And I'm the founder of Thousand Earths Cuponomics, which is a way to make our species multiplanetary and regenerative. Thank you.
Super interesting, Daniel. Thanks for being here. Daniel Bader, or Dan Bader, would you please introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm coming out of Chicago. I retired from the Chicago Department of Public Health in 2016. My areas of interest are public health, mental health, abrupt climate change, and bioweapons, biowarfare, vaccines, and this COVID-19 situation. And that obviously these days absorbs a lot of my mental energy.
Thank you for being here, Dan. And last but not least, Cesare, would you please introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Cesare Jurevich from USA, and I'm joining you from the outskirts of Chicago. My main interest as a thinker is animal liberation. Ethics, animal liberation, economics, social and economic justice. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you for being here, Cesare. That completes our introductions, and we will move on to today's presentation. I'm going to be presenting my idea, which is part 2 of the raw meat diet, the healthiest diet on the planet. And today's topic is bacteria is your best friend. So this idea has been written up to share with others in Egora-ilp.org. This idea actually is not in Egora yet. It's going to be compiled as one idea with all 3 parts at the end of this presentation, which we will continue into next week. But Egora is basically the worldwide stock market of ideas, and you can find it at egora-ilp.org. And it's an online platform where people from around the world can turn their ideas into policy, share them with others, and help build a better world. So I will go ahead and screen share, and we will begin with the reading of the idea. Okay. Alrighty, miss. What can I get for you to eat today? The waitress asked me politely. I will take the 16-ounce ribeye with no salt, no seasoning, and I would like that raw, please, I responded. Raw? She asked. Okay then. Then 2 minutes later, the chef appears and he says, so I take it you want a raw steak? I nodded. You don't want it seared, blue, maybe even a little cooked? No, sir, I would just like it raw, please, I responded. So he gave me a look like I was out of my mind and he walked back to the kitchen. But within time, dinner was served and I enjoyed my raw steak. It was on Mother's Day with my mom. And sure, I was a conversation piece among the restaurant, but I smiled to myself as I ate because from my food, I received something that nobody else in the restaurant obtained in adequate abundance, and that is bacteria. The 18th century philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau stated that all problems arise when man strays away from the pathway of nature. For in nature, there is perfection. Raw food in its natural state contains the perfect amount of nutrient ratios, enzyme structures, and bioavailable bacteria. However, when we put our food into fire, we destroy it. Studies show that the following nutrients are reduced during the cooking of red meat. So the water-soluble vitamins like vitamin C and the B vitamins. And then also the fat-soluble vitamins, A, D, E, and K, K2. Then the minerals, which is potassium, magnesium, sodium, and calcium. So in addition, cooking food also produces a plethora of toxins. So according to the National Cancer Institute's heterocyclic amines, I'm going to call them HCAs, and PAHs are chemicals formed when muscle meat, including beef, pork, fish, or poultry, is cooked using high temperature methods such as pan frying or grilling directly over an open flame. So in laboratory experiments, HCAs and PAHs have been found to be mutagenic, which means that they cause changes in DNA that may increase the risk of cancer. So they produce carcinogens, essentially. So when we put our food into fire, burn it, and stray away from nature's pathway, we are bound to face a plethora of problems, such problems that lead to chronic illnesses of all sorts. So did you know that humans in nature have been eating raw foods loaded with bacteria since the beginning of time? In fact, some tribes even consume fermented meats known as high meat, and it's called that because the high concentration of bacteria and parasites makes you feel amazing, like a high feeling. And of course, these foods contain, an abundance of bacteria. And one example of this that actually still exists today is the Chinese 100-year-old egg. So in the 20th century, researchers such as Weston A. Price, who wrote a book called Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, and it's a study of the primitive peoples. Also, I don't want to butcher his name, but I'm going to call him Stephenson, or Wilhelm Stephenson, wrote Cancer, a Disease of Modern Civilization. So he compared the rates of cancer that exist in the modern world to the cancer in the primitive peoples, or among them. So both researchers studied the diet and lifestyles of the primitive peoples, like the isolated Swiss, the isolated Gaelics, the Eskimos, the Okinawa, the Hadza Bushmen, and more. They all discovered a common theme. Every tribe ate an animal-based diet with a mix of cooked, raw, and fermented foods. Very few plants were consumed, and when they were consumed, most were cooked to kill some of the anti-nutrients that are naturally found in plants, because they also release protection mechanisms because they don't want to be eaten. So yes, you produce toxins when you cook, but you also release some as well from plants, for example. So though the primitive peoples do not shower regularly, wash their hands with soap and water before every meal, and consume foods practically infested with bacteria, they live free of disease and in peace and harmony with one another. Now, on the other hand, in the crazed modern world, which is far removed from nature, where people shower daily, they sanitize regularly, and they consume predominantly cooked and processed foods, the citizens are facing a crisis of chronic illnesses. In the United States alone, nearly 36.5% of adults are obese. Every year, about 647,000 Americans die from heart disease, which makes it the leading cause of death in the United States. Is it possible that the cause of disease could be as simple as the very foods that Americans are putting into their bodies, the way it's being prepared, and the absence of our beneficial bacteria? So let's talk a little bit more about the importance of bacteria. So as I mentioned above, bacteria is naturally present in all living things. You can't get around it. It is the origin of life. So by nature, life is designed to consume life. Humans are the only animal on the planet, other than those they've domesticated, that consume cooked and processed dead foods. When you put something into fire, it dies. Humans and the animals they've domesticated are also the only beings on this planet that are chronically ill. Every other animal in nature consumes a species-specific raw foods diet as nature intended, and because of this, they too live disease-free, unless they are exposed to modern environmental toxins or something. So we know, as the study showed us earlier, that cooking damages food, and it's also obvious because anything you put into fire will be damaged. But how damaging is this? So let's look at pasteurized milk, for example. So pasteurized milk is milk that has been heated to extreme temperatures to destroy the dangerous pathogens, so to say. Well, when milk is heated, one of the essential digestive enzymes called lactase is destroyed. Now, lactase is present to facilitate the digestion of lactose, which are the milk sugars. So with the absence of lactase and other bacterial agents, lactose becomes harder and harder to digest, so people become lactose intolerant. Now, if these same people would drink whole raw milk, they would seldom experience any major digestive issues. So a couple studies show some interesting information. In 2011, a survey of 56 Michigan raw milk drinkers found that 11 individuals claimed that they experienced symptoms of lactose intolerance when drinking processed milks, but had no ill side effects from drinking raw milk. In 2014, a survey of 153 Maryland raw milk drinkers, 59 respondents claimed no discomfort after drinking raw milk, but discomfort from drinking pasteurized milk. So what is it that makes a difference? Bacteria and active enzymes present in the milk's natural raw form create a almost perfect digestion. Now, what a lot of us don't realize is that more than 90% of our body is made of bacteria. Some people say 90, some say 99. I tend to go more towards 99 because it's about 90% of our cells that are microbial, which is based solely on the number of bacteria in our guts. But we also have bacteria in our hair, all over our skin, and pretty much everything else on us and in us. So most of the body's functions are bacterial, meaning they're performed by bacteria, including the digestion of our food. So when you consume foods that are naturally abundant in bacteria, you are nourishing your body on a cellular and a bacterial level. Since most of the body's functions are performed by bacteria, ingesting more bacteria helps your body function more optimally. This is why the primitive peoples are so healthy and don't have disease. So when a piece of cooked food is eaten, it is already deficient in certain nutrients and bacteria. Now, this puts your body into a state of shock because without the presence of bacteria in the food to facilitate digestion, the body is forced to digest the food on its own without the help of bacteria. Now, in addition to that, the carcinogens that are produced from the cooking of the food also poison cells. So the body is actually forced to leach nutrients from healthy cells to nourish the now damaged cells. Now, when this process is repeated over time, we have cellular degeneration. And cellular degeneration within time will result in diseases of all sorts. So it's important to recognize that disease doesn't just mean heart disease, cancer. Disease, if we break the word down, it is dis-ease. So your body is in a state of not ease. So this could show up in common colds and fevers and maybe a chronic cough, anything. Disease can be anything that takes you away from your natural state of ease. Now, I do want to mention that there are, of course, other toxins that poison the body and cause disease in addition to cooked and processed foods. So we have, of course, environmental pollutants from factories, radiation poisoning, EMFs, and more. But the unfortunate truth is that modern society lives in a toxic world, and consuming a diet in whole raw foods is more essential than ever before for obtaining optimal health. Because if we're eating whole raw foods, they actually promote cellular reproduction, this is proven, and they nourish our bodies. So when we are being destroyed, you can at least repair the cells in your body if you're consuming whole raw foods. Most people don't do this, which is why they degenerate over time. So wrapping it up, in the early 1900s, a researcher named Dr. Antoine Béchamp proved that germs were not the cause of disease, but rather they appeared as a result of disease in the body. So Béchamp discovered that bacteria are created from small granules of life that he called microzymas. And in his own words, these were the organized yet living remains of beings that lived in long past ages. They are the transmitters of heredity. Within the chromatin material of the human sperm are contained all of the microzymian granules needed to genetically reproduce all the different cells essential for the reproduction of the human species. After many experiments and microscopic examinations of these granules, Béchamp's research proved that microzymas were capable of developing into common living organisms that we call bacteria. Bacteria and parasites work in symbiosis with the body, actually, feeding on dead cells and waste to eliminate toxicity and help us formulate renewed, healthy cells. This is similar to how flies appear when garbage is left out. Bacteria appears to clean up cellular waste. So like flies, bacteria are not the cause of disease, but the garbage, but they are more like the janitors who come to clean the mess up. Contrary to Beauchamp's research were the speculations of Louis Pasteur, who the founder of modern medicine and the infamous germ theory, which is really nothing more than that. It's just a theory. The belief that pathogens form spontaneously and cause disease has never actually been proven, but it's been accepted as the official scientific theory, which is in practice today. Now, on his deathbed, Pasteur denounced his research, stating that the cause of disease is not microbes, but rather the environment in which they feed on. So we ended up coming to the same conclusion as Beauchamp did. They were actually rivals at the time, pretty much. But this information was, of course, ignored by the press and never released to the public. After all, there is much profit to be made through medication, pharmaceuticals, and hospital bills, much more than would be made if people followed their natural diets. Now, it's important to know that disease is not something that is caught. It is created within the body by toxic environments. On the bright side, the inverse is just as true, that we can create healthful, happy, and disease-free lives for ourselves, our families, and for the generations to come by choosing to consume whole, raw living foods with a plethora of beneficial bacteria, nature's best friend and our greatest helper against disease. Now, last thing I want to say is that this information goes against everything that you've been told since you were a child. You see a raw steak like the waitstaff at the restaurant I was at on Mother's Day, and you watch in awe as I eat and enjoy the grass-fed ribeye, thinking to yourself, is this woman crazy? And maybe I am, or maybe I'm onto something. I believe we should question everything we hear and formulate a personal philosophy of our own based on our own intellectual understanding of the world and how it works, not necessarily what someone or some institution has poured into us. So it boils down to one question that I will leave you here before we go into discussion, that who should we trust more, the government or Mother Nature? Okay, great. We already have some hands up in the chats, and we will go ahead and, well, before we move into discussion, we'll just take a vote to see who is in general agreement with the philosophy of this idea that bacteria is our best friend. Okay, awesome. Ramses, okay, cool. Stacey and Dan, is that a full hand up or half? Okay, you're on mute, but I think.
Yeah, I was giving you 3/4.
Okay, awesome. Okay, cool. I'm excited to see too the research that you guys have learned since the last time. So I take it that usually Daniel is kind of, Daniel Tweed is kind of in the middle. Is that right?
40%.
Yeah, there.
Okay,
40%.
and then, okay, got it. Okay, 40, oh, I see in the chat. Cesari is either abstaining or not in agreements. Okay, I can take it he's abstaining. And then Joy, I know last time you just wanted to listen, so that is totally fine if you want to do that. But if you'd like to participate, then feel free to jump in.
I'm listening.
Okay, awesome. Well, if anything changes, just put your hand up and we will go to you. But okay, great. So we'll go ahead and move into discussion. Now, if I'm correct, Stacey is up first.
Yeah, so I really want to believe this, and I understand the idea that whole, uncooked foods are healthier and contain more life force.
Mm-hmm.
But it says that the Native Americans cooked their meat into stews and stuff. Have you looked into that?
Mm-hmm. Yes, great question. I'll address that super quickly before I go to Cesare. Yes, so they do eat actually a mix of cooked and raw foods. The primitive peoples that are here today are not the same that were here thousands or millions of years ago. They have had some kind of influence into modern civilization, so that's how cooking has passed down. But they still do eat a good amount of raw and fermented foods as well. And I would recommend that to the average person. I think it's not the worst thing in the world to eat some cooked foods as long as you do have an abundance of raw foods in your diet as well. If you can do all raw, great. But yeah, okay. Cesare, you are up next.
So that was interesting. Very good presentation with some interesting materials. And I mean, I've heard that raw food is good for you. So that's why I eat raw food sometimes when I feel like it, when I want to. The problem is I just really, really don't care. Like I just eat what tastes good. Like that's my priority by far. If it tastes good, I'm gonna eat it. If it doesn't, I don't care if it's cooked or raw. I'll eat it because it tastes good, you know? And of course, but I'm not talking about animal products because I look at them as, products of violence and oppression. So that's off the table, just for ethical reasons. But this whole thing about bacteria, I think that's actually kind of fascinating because you do provide like a kind of I don't want to say compelling case, but very interesting position that maybe like all of science is kind of like wrong on this. And that's not really like, it's not really that far-fetched as it might be. There's like a lot of things that people have taken, as proven that just they later found out it was all wrong. So this whole idea, like, the causation versus correlation, with bacteria, I mean, it's kind of making me scratch my head here, but I just really don't care all that much. Like, this is something if Veritasium, I really love the Veritasium YouTube channel. I think his name is Derek. If he did a video about this, I'll definitely watch a video about this. But again, I'm not like going to research this. So, but I guess the one thing that I am thinking about is why haven't animals, I guess some sea animals have done this, but why haven't like land animals evolved like poison type? Why aren't their bodies poisonous to eat like certain and I guess some animals are that way. Like there are certain like frogs, if you were to eat that frog, it would mess you up. But there are a few animals that have toxins in their bodies, but this makes me wonder, why didn't more animals evolve like toxic, I don't know what they call them, like little nodes or something, maybe glands, like toxin glands, so that other animals don't eat them. Like seriously, like when you think about it, wouldn't that make sense for evolution to go that way? I'm gonna stop here and I'm gonna think about what else I'm gonna say later. I yield. Thank you.
Okay, great. Interesting points, Cesare. Yeah, I respect your open-mindedness a lot, so thank you for that. Next, we'll go to Daniel Tweed.
Yeah, hi. You could actually view bacteria as being at the top of the food chain because, let's face it, they eat everything and everything eats them. So they're kind of at the midpoint of a circular food chain, perhaps. But in my view, evolution is a very comprehensive patterning regenerative system. And it does things that contractors do. It designs, it builds, it operates, and maintains. And evolution is trying to do that on a very comprehensive scale. So it's now at the point where the biosphere could actually replicate itself beyond the Earth, and we could become multiplanetary, cosmically enlivened species. And the dinosaurs had about 100 million years to evolve and do this, but an asteroid got them and wiped them out before they could have a space program. We, on the other hand, have a space program. We can avoid the fate of the dinosaurs, and that's what evolution is driving us to do, in my opinion. And prove me wrong. I yield.
All right, great, Daniel. Thank you. We'll go to Ramses next.
So first of all, very nice writing. Thank you so much, Megan. I like the introduction. So I looked up the theory of germs. So if you don't mind, I'm just gonna share the headline.
Sure,
of course, I don't agree or disagree with this. I just wanted to know your opinion. So Wikipedia is claiming that this theory is a currently accepted scientific theory, okay, which they call germ theory of disease, which states that the pathogens or germs can lead to disease. And it says a germ here may refer to not just bacterium, but to any type of microorganism. And finally, of course, the Arab editors will want to show that they are superior to all other nations. So they have inserted references to Ibn Sina in year 2025. And of course, this shit, like I'm not gonna rely on Ibn Sina in order to prove a scientific theorem, you know, in 2021. However, just wanted to know, of course, the article references a lot of recent research, but just wanted to know your opinion on this.
Sure. So I am up next. So I will go ahead and answer. Was there anything, I know you pointed out a couple of things, but were there any specific questions that you wanted me to specifically address from that?
Yeah, so you mentioned that there was a theory developed in the beginning of last century, right? And it is a germ theory as well, but it states exactly the opposite. It states that germs do not cause diseases. But now it sounds like the scientific consensus is that, you know, according to the article, is that germs actually cause diseases. So what do you think about this? How, for example, if I'm searching for the truth, what should I do?
Right. Okay. So I'm looking at the Wikipedia article now. So yeah, a lot of the information that is out there is false, or it may be partially true, but it may be misconnected. When it comes to the truth, honestly, what kind of sold it for me was, now the science to me, yes, it is important to talk about and to address, but what really got it for me was just looking at what exists in nature. So when I figured out that in nature, they literally eat raw meat. Of course, they do cook. Well, okay, in nature, they wouldn't cook, but primitive tribes today do cook some foods and all the animal foods. And they're extremely healthy and live disease-free. And then I look at modern society that eats a plant-based diet that is processed and cooked. It just, to me, in my head, I'm like, okay, intellectually, I don't even need to know the science. It just makes sense that this is of nature and this is what's most beneficial. So that's pretty much what I have to say on that. What I really have to do is actually dig through that article and really read it to give you a specific answer. But yeah, so I see that the basic forms of germ theory were proposed back in 1025 and everything. So yes, this is an idea that's been around for a while. It was pretty much in the 1900s when it was funded. And Pasteur was funded by a lot of people above him, such as the Emperor of France, because they really wanted to push this idea. Because the medical industry is one of the largest financial industries out there. I mean, think of this. If we agree that, or if it becomes true, as people collectively agree that the germ theory is flawed, the entire medical industry changes and would go down, which means that also the pharmaceutical industry would go down, which also includes supplements and things like that. So I guess my belief is that the germ theory is something that is used today largely to, it's for profit and control. So I would take those points into consideration. Did that answer what you asked?
Yeah, Megan, thank you so much.
Okay. Okay, great. So after myself is, let's see. I think Ramses again. You're up?
Yeah, because I had another question to Sadai. My question here is, instead of killing animals, last week the week before last one, we discussed waiting for the animal to die and then eating their flesh. And the argument was that their flesh is gonna be eaten in any ways, you know, if not by us, it's gonna be by the worms. So it is a kind of mercy and if we eat them, and at the same time it's our biological type in general. So all in us, like we are just eating ourselves. And this apply to humans as well, like humans eating humans. So I'm wondering if you consider this as ethical, because you as a vegan have your ethical stand, have your ethical reasons not to eat meat. So just wanted to know what you think about this. And thank you.
Okay, great. I will answer that really quickly and go over to Dan. So what I think about that. So, okay, on the topic of humans eating other humans, is it ethical? Well, morals and ethics, was that the question?
So it was to Cesare,
Oh,
but
okay.
please, yeah, but you please, I would like to know your opinion as well.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so the way I look at it is morals and ethics don't exist in nature because no other animals have them. There's something that we create in our own mind. They can be beneficial. So I wouldn't necessarily want to kill and eat the people I love in my life and in my family. However, if I'm in nature and my family or my tribe comes across another opposing tribe and they kill some of the tribe members, sure, that's probably some of the best nutrition you could get. That's kind of the way I look at it. Is it's also similar in nature too, to where I don't think lions would, kill members of their own family, but if two opposing lion prides come across each other and fight, they will fight to the death. Do they actually eat the other lions? I don't know, but I think human nutrition would probably be one of the best things for us. In fact, if you actually look into it, I know in Germany, not even 100 years ago, you could go into certain health food stores and buy human body parts. It was just normal. So I think it was the same thing when people died, they would just sell their different body parts because back then they understood that, oh, if you have some kind of ailment like liver issues, eat a human liver and it actually works to repair. So it's kind of the way that I look at it. But anyways, on to Dan Bader.
So I have some thoughts. Again, I want to add I thought the write-up was really good. It was really, as you were told, really well done. And I do think that you've made a valid argument in terms of the nutritional value of raw meat as opposed to other nutritional products. But of course, in reality, there's huge problems with eating raw meat because the supply of meat is a problem right away, unless we're going into humans. There just simply isn't enough meat to really go around in cooked, raw, period. Plus, they are getting ready. They, meaning those who control the levers of power, are getting ready to remove meat pretty much from a dietary option, whether it's cooked or raw. And it's also, a lot of people have a sentiment very similar to Cesare's, where you should let, to some degree, these animals alone, that it's very brutal, of course, butchering them and the slaughterhouses, et cetera. So, there's a context and, there's pros and then there's, some cons in terms of, so for example, if you were recommending to somebody, Megan, you were saying, here, I want you to try some raw meat. I think it's a good idea. Here are the pros. And then you would also tell them some cons. What would you say would be the cons, the things that they would have to watch out for in terms of raw meat consumption?
Great points, Daniel. I look forward to responding to those. I appreciate that that you brought that up. So, but before myself, we're going to go to Cesare.
So I'm actually eating an apple right now, not really to make a point. I just really wanted an apple. It just seemed like they're
Raw
good.
food.
they're delicious and they're raw. Actually, this is, yeah, I was thinking about all this raw food, and I'm like, well, I should probably eat some more raw food. So I do have an apple. So to answer Ramses's question, well, yeah, I mean, sure, if you want to go around like the forest and find dead animals, then go ahead, but nobody's going to do that. I mean, come on, seriously, that's just not going to happen. So, I mean, some people might actually, some people, you know what? The other day I was downtown Chicago and I saw a dead, like a dead bird that you might be interested in. I don't know how long it's been dead on the sidewalk laying there, but no,
We were
seriously,
discussing
nobody's.
about domestic care, so we would take care of them, domestically. And when it is a time for the animal to die, we eat them instead of us killing them.
So I look at this issue on two different levels. One is I do consider my veganism to be my personal choice. And we could discuss that, there are a lot of different reasons for that, but I do consider that my personal choice. It's not something I expect of everyone or I demand of everyone. What I do demand of everyone is animal liberation. And this is really a matter of just, it's really a matter of politics and ethics and politics. I just simply don't trust anyone who holds animals captive. I just don't trust them. That's it. That's what it comes down to. I don't trust humans who hold captive other animals. So I don't trust them to take care of them. I don't trust them to do anything. Just, let the animals go. That's the only thing. If you want to go hunt them in the wild, go ahead. That's your personal choice. It's your animal rights to go hunt for other animals. The other thing I wanted to say was the way that this proposition ended, it kind of created this kind of silly false dichotomy. It's like, do you trust nature or do you trust the government? And it's funny because nature and government are actually very, very much alike. The nature provides a lot of things to you, but it's trying to kill you. And then your government, provides a lot of things for you, but it also, there's a good chance it might kill you. I mean, I think we can kind of rein in the government a bit more than nature, and we're much better off when we control government. But we're not better off when we control nature. So that's different. But the one other point I wanted to make is the whole idea of cooking food. I think it's, and especially of cooking meat. Not that this is something I'm personally interested in, but as a theoretical exercise, I think it does kind of make sense that if people are going to eat other animals, then they would eat them raw. And it does make sense that naturally it would be healthier to actually eat animal flesh raw. I think the reason that people started cooking things in general is because, and maybe this is more true for plants, but I think people started cooking things in order to extract more calories out of the food. It wasn't to make the food healthier, it was actually to get more energy. So I guess that's really the reason why people cook food. And so it probably makes sense that these extra calories come at a cost, that they denature some other nutrition that other than calories. But I don't know how true that is for plants versus animal foods. I think it's more plants that lose their nutritional value when you cook them, but then you get more calories out of it. But I don't know if the same is true for animal foods. But it sounds like it would be but maybe it's not as much as with plants. So I don't know. I'd be curious to hear Megan speak to that. I yield the floor. Thank you.
Yeah, great point, Cesare. I definitely look forward to touching on that as well. Before myself, we'll go to Stacey, and then Daniel Tweed is after that. But take it away, Stacey.
Okay, it seems to me, I really wonder if it was really that we're meant to eat raw meat, why did we start cooking things? Because that was clearly before Pasteur and our government. And I wonder if it isn't because in our creativity, we began combining ingredients and it was really, really tasty. Like the Native Americans combined their meat to make stews, and stews are awesome. And then you spoke of when we were talking about cannibalism, well, if you run into a tribe, then you have to kill them, and why not eat them? And I think hopefully we're moving into another era where we're not just running into people and going, I have to kill you to survive my tribe, but that it is the survival of the whole universe, and is killing this other tribe to save my tribe what the universe wants. And I don't know, I'm just kind of against cannibalism. I don't see a way that really works. And I also agree that keeping animals for meat is never humane. There's no way that you can take care of animals the way that they really need to be taken care of. And I say that from being a person who kept a hobby farm. It's just impossible to keep them healthy all the time. And the mistakes that I made were really, really painful for me. And I believe what we should do is, in Texas here, we have land that is ag exempt if you allow the neighbor's cattle to roam on it. We also have an enormous number of deer and wild pigs. And if we adopted in the areas where it's safe, that your neighborhood just says, all right, guys, this is our neighborhood, and we're going to let the cows and the deer and the pigs roam. And a few of us are hunters here, and we'll keep the neighborhood supplied. I think that is a real legitimate way to supply meat to our communities. And lastly, I wonder about, I really want to eat less cooked food, but when I take something out and reheat it, I'm really into leftovers. I understand I have to cook it to 165 degrees to keep those bacteria, when we've been trying to make it last longer in the fridge, to make it safe to eat. And so I just thought I'd throw that out there. I keep heating it up too much, and I wonder how to do leftovers correctly. Thank you very much. I yield.
Okay, great points and great questions, Stacey. I look forward to responding to those as well. Daniel Tweed, go ahead.
Hey, yeah, thanks. Great conversation, actually. Okay, a couple points. First off, I think we all need enzymes, which are crucial for life, but when you have a prolonged dry heat above 117 degrees Fahrenheit, or a prolonged wet heat above 150 degrees Fahrenheit, it destroys or deactivates enzymes. But I think, if you had some fresh meat and you just killed it, it would be really tasty. But after it sat around for a few days, it would be pretty disgusting and you wouldn't want to eat it. So I think, there wasn't always raw meat, fresh meat on demand. So cooking served the purpose, more of a preserving way to concentrate that protein and make it available between successful hunts and kills of raw meat bearing foods. So that's one point I would make. The second one is bacteria is really essential to the development of civilization. Most people think that agriculture started so we could make grains and make bread, and that led to civilization. But there's new evidence that says people were collecting wild grains, and the wild grains got wet and made beer, and then the beer actually spurred the development of agricultural stationary civilizations. In fact, there's like ancient pictures, people making beer and bread, and the beer is actually found to predate the making of bread. Plus, it provided a social lubrication that literally made people more interested in cooperating. And so that's a second point. And another kind of tangential point, which I heard recently, but it relates to the foundation of civilization, is that the sociopathic personality types may have been crucial for the foundation of civilization. Namely, in ideas that like, oh, my bloodline is so great, you got to have my bloodline be in charge from now on. That was, clearly a departure from a meritocracy-based civilization. And there was one other point. Oh yeah, Cesare says I misquoted him when he said that government and nature are alike, because they both give you stuff, but also are both trying to kill you. And he says I misquoted him, but I'm pretty sure I got the gist of what he was saying. So I would offer him the floor to correct the gist of what I said. That's it. I yield. Thanks.
Okay, but before I go ahead and Cesare, would you like to correct anything or re-summarize?
Well, I mean, they're not, I mean, I did say that they are a lot alike, but I wasn't saying that the government's trying to kill you. Obviously, it doesn't make sense for the government to try to kill you. No, it's just that very often it does. But that's, yeah. So obviously there are differences.
Well, yeah, nature may not be actively trying to kill you, but very often nature ends up killing you. Whether or not there was an intention behind nature wanting to kill you, it doesn't really matter if you're dead.
There are parts of nature that are actively trying to kill you, but not so much parts of the government. Like no parts of the government are.
Well, what about evil slaving governments like a third of the world lives under? They're more likely to kill you.
Yeah, so there are sometimes government does that, but in general, that's not what it's trying to do.
Anyway, it'd be an interesting topic for some future discussion.
Honestly, I'm so down for that. I'm gonna write that down to like do that here because I have so much to say on that. Well, okay, one thing I want to say really quickly is there are totally parts of the government that are trying to kill you. We're literally experiencing a genocide as we speak. Now they're doing it really creatively because we don't actively see people dying like happened in the Holocaust. We see people dying in other ways through poor nutrition and poor health. There are many, many aspects of the government that are trying to kill us. Things like chemtrails, also advocating plant-based diets, and fake, Beyond Meats, keeping people shielded away from nature. Yeah, the government is totally trying to, it's not necessarily trying to kill people so much as it is to enslave them and make them ill. And yes, okay, nature in general actually promotes survival of honestly the fittest, not to be Darwinian or anything, because I don't agree with a lot of his philosophies, but it makes sense that the strongest, most intelligent beings do survive. So yeah, of course, if a lion sees a human, now actually there are videos I've seen of lions running away from humans and like tribe members. So we often forget that we really are at the top tier, and but I think maybe it depends on the consciousness you operate. But okay, before I go into actually answering, yeah, I'm going to go to you, Daniel, and then I'll go into answering the points mentioned. But Daniel, go ahead.
Okay, one thing I forgot to mention, we talked about how we're mistreating animals and we're holding them captive, but actually you could house the entire human population in the state of Texas at just the density of Tokyo. So we know that Tokyo is not a terrible place. So imagine if Texas was nothing but Tokyo, the whole rest of the world could be wild habitat. And we're really being greedy in the way we're using the land surface and the water surface of Earth. We're not the only species out there, and there's a great book called Edenicity that proposes, a more dense, integrated way of living that would leave immense habitats available, and we could commute between the population centers with Hyperloop vehicles, and that's a very viable thing. We should really consider it. It's part of my platform. Dan Tweed for Thousand Oaks 2022 City Council.
Great points, Daniel. That actually leads into the next point I wanted to make to answer the question, is there enough meat to go around? This is something that Dan Bader brought up. I totally believe that there is. And also, I don't buy for 1 second that the world population is what we're told. I don't believe at all it's 7.8 billion or whatever it is it's at now. I think it's way less than that, maybe even under 1 billion. I don't know the exact number or answer, and maybe it doesn't really matter because there's no way you would actually meet everybody in the world anyways, but they've essentially just grouped people into crowded cities. So it looks like there's so many people around, but actually when you go out into the rural areas, it's very, very different. So yeah, I don't know if I can't necessarily prove to you that it's less than 7.8 billion people, but it's just a personal belief based on my understanding. And I mean, also, feeding people meat is way more efficient than feeding people plants because meat is way more bioavailable. You get way more nutrients per calorie anyways, because yes, we eat for calories, but also we eat mostly for nutrients. Even a person who is 800 pounds, I would still consider them starving because clearly they're eating so much because they are lacking essential nutrients. So that's what our body seeks, is nourishment. One cow could feed an entire family for, I would guess, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 months. So 2 cows a year per family. Maybe that's depending on the size of the family. But I mean, that's actually great right there. If people lived spread out, they lived on even 2 acres of land, and they could easily survive. It'd be way better for the environment. Versus plants, you have to grow many, many acres of plants, and you have to eat such high volumes of them to feed people. And also the fact that they're not our natural diet and we don't even have the apparatus to digest them, the bioavailability, meaning what we actually, not what we ingest, but what our body actually processes, is very minimal. So in summary, I do believe there is plenty of meats to go around. Now, like Dan mentioned, that our government, that I do believe is trying to harm us, is going to be issuing food shortages and increasing the price of meat. It's already happening as we speak. We might see something like hyperinflation, but what they're trying to do is make it really hard for people to be independent and also to be healthy. So this is why meat prices are going to be going up. And in that case, people who don't have financial means or don't have a way to get it may suffer from that, unfortunately. So that is also happening. So it's something to actually really think about and prepare for. That's another thing too, is talking about the argument of animal liberation and how it's the best thing for animals. And I can agree to that, Cesare, that the best thing to do would be to go hunt animals in nature and then eat them fresh. I mean, that would be awesome. Now, is that always realistic? No. And I can't, what is the harm of having your own animals? Now, I haven't actually done that yet. I'm going to, but yet I haven't. And Stacey mentioned she had. So I'd be curious to learn more about what were kind of more the fallbacks of it. I know you can't keep every animal healthy and happy all the time, but we sure can try our best. And in a case where the government completely raises meat prices to its absurd, and we say we have some kind of nationwide food shortage, to me it makes sense to have your own supply of food, whether it's goats for milk and eggs from chickens. Like, you could, if you needed to in survival times, you could be very healthy off of just milk and eggs. So for that reason, I think regenerative farms are really cool. And even visiting them too, if you haven't ever been to one, to really meet your local farmer and learn about what they do. It's farms, the way I look at it, are almost like safe havens for animals. So they're actually safer on a farm, protected, than they would be in nature where they're vulnerable. Now, that does sort of interfere with the process in nature, so there's more arguments that go into that, but that's just my thoughts on that part. So cons of eating raw meat. In terms of health, there's really none unless you're eating toxic raw meat. So I've talked about this before, but if you eat a toxic animal, then like a grain-fed cow that has been exposed to antibiotics, or like you find a dead raccoon that ate trash from the city and you eat that, I mean, I wouldn't recommend that, because that animal is going to be filled with toxins, and then in turn with that, you would actually get the toxins. So let's say that actually you do have like meat that could potentially be toxic. You may be better off cooking it, because you would kill some toxins while then adding more toxins. So it's like a catch-22. But overall, if you are sourcing your meat well from local regenerative farms where the animals eat their natural diet, so cows eat 100% grass, chickens are raised on the pasture, same with the pigs, then there really is no cons as long as the animals aren't exposed to toxins. Vaccines can also be toxins too in the animals. Now, if you are going to eat raw meat from the grocery store from a grain-fed cow, you will be okay if you eat lean meat, because the fat and organs are what store toxins. So if you eat meat that has no fat on it, you actually won't be exposed to pretty much any toxins. And then one more potential con is the social aspect, right? Because not many people in the world do eat raw meat. And so your friends might think you're weird. So if you do eat raw meat and you have family and a spouse that eats raw meat and you can raise your kids like that, then I think that is actually a really wonderful thing and a blessing. But for a lot of people, maybe that's not the reality, and they might feel a little bit socially isolated if they're ordering raw meat at a restaurant, or maybe they might miss out on cooking or eating meals with the family. So that one might be another con. Okay, other question. Why did we cook? Well, I don't know, actually, to be honest. I don't know why humans started cooking. I maybe could see to get more energy, but at the same time, raw food has more energy than cooked food because it has more nutrients. However, if you try it, you can, and maybe Stacey can relate because she said she did try the raw filet mignon. You can't necessarily eat as much raw meat as you can cooked. Did you experience that, Stacey? Just out of curiosity.
It is very rich. I would agree. You don't want to eat as much of it. And that seems reasonable. The portions that we eat are ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah. So I found too, like, for example, if somebody gave me a 16-ounce cooked ribeye, I could eat all of that 10 minutes probably. But a 16-ounce raw ribeye, that could last me, 2 days worth of food because it's so much it's richer. Now, maybe people needed to eat larger quantities of food at once, like Daniel Tweed said, for preservation, and maybe they couldn't necessarily ferment it because they were always on the move. Maybe I could see in that way. So I don't know. I think maybe that's another topic we could talk about is just brainstorm what are some reasons why people did start cooking. And last couple things, how to do leftovers. Honestly, I don't know, Stacey. When food is cooked in the first place, actually, um, how do I even actually explain this well? I'm not that informed on this. I can send you some studies I've researched, but for example, people getting sick from milk, bacterial poisoning in milk actually didn't happen until they started pasteurizing milk. So it's kind of the same thing when people do get any kind of bacterial food poisoning or whatever. A lot of times it happens from cooked foods, and it's not even a poisoning. It's because the bacterial is at an imbalance and it messes up something within your body. So how to actually do that? I don't really have an answer for that. I think once you cook it in the first place, it's just sort of ruined, I guess, if that makes sense. I know it's kind of a dark answer, but if I have an answer in the future that's better, I will get back to you on that. But okay, that was all. We will go over to Dan Bader now, and I believe after that we're going to move into closing remarks unless anybody wanted to say something before then. But Dan Bader, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So I the way things seem to be moving right now, and in terms of food, it seems very clear that they're going to eliminate much of the meat supply, and they're going to do it. It's going to be justified because of the plan that is in place, that we're going to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030, and then zero net emissions by 2050. And meat, there's all sorts of groups who really have a problem with the consumption of meat. And I'm from all sorts of different ethical perspectives. But they are determined to do that. And I think they will do that because it's a rather easy one to eliminate. And also, I think that one of the things when you talk about the consumption of raw meat, you're talking about the nutritional value. And I think it is important, whether you get it through eating raw meat or any other food you may consume, you need to take supplements in order to get the micronutrients that you need to have a strong immune system. And one of the things that it's just so, it's like what they do is they give our population here in the United States, I'm talking, they give our population essentially junk food. It's encouraged. And so, they have scientists who evolve ways to give you the, fat, salt, sugar taste, so that the junk foods with very little nutritional value become addictive. And of course, for example, one of the things that I consume regularly is just a tin of sardines. If I have a tin of sardines, that pretty much could stand as a meal for me. I probably have a raw vegetable with it, but it fills me up because of the nutritional value. So if I eat a tin of sardines and a stalk of broccoli raw. Now, I don't particularly like the taste of sardines or the broccoli or a lot of foods, but it's quite clear that what is pushed on us makes us sick. It makes us very, very sick. We have, they say that 44% of the millennials have got a chronic disease, which probably is a lot of it is going to be tied to inadequate dietary intake. They make you sick. They don't care about, public health prevention at all. They make you sick, and then you go to the medical industry, the doctors and the device makers and obviously big pharma, and then they treat you for the sickness that you have from the poor diet that they constantly thrust on you. And I don't know whether it's true or not, but I do see here and there, things that say the very upper echelon elites who are, again, they have the levers of power right now. They have the money and they have a lot of technical scientific know-how. And they and their families do not consume this junk that's put out on the public. And I might also add that during this COVID-19 tragedy, in a way, in terms of what it's done, almost all of it unnecessary, those individuals were using the therapeutics long before the vaccines were even put on the table. They were using the hydroxychloroquine cocktail and ivermectin when it was available. And I remember, Amy Klobuchar, the senator from Minnesota, her husband got sick with COVID kind of early on, I think, in the situation. And her husband used the hydroxychloroquine cocktail. And when she was asked about it, and I just bring this, when she was asked about it, she kind of went, well, they were giving him a lot of things. I really don't know whether he had it. Now, what could be more dishonest? Of course, you knew what your husband, who was pretty sick with COVID, was getting, but it wasn't politically appropriate for her as a big shot, Democratic senator running for, who was running for president, to go ahead and say that. And our population here in the United States, and it's true elsewhere, but we are completely getting screwed over every which way. And it's very, very hard for people, to realize the harsh reality. So when it comes to the food supply and the population, I'm hearing what you're saying, Megan, that you don't believe that we have, 7.5 billion. But for the sake of thinking in a certain way, assume that that is what you have, that you actually do have, say, around 7.5 billion people on the planet. The people who've got the power, these, scientific, technical, these people who've got all the money, the whole bunch of them, they believe in abrupt climate change. They think that it's real. They think it's happening. And they do desperately want to depopulate this planet. And they look at people, like, for example, people consume this junk food. And if you're one of these people who are in the elites, you look at that and you say to I do have kind of a sense, I think, of how they think, and I've talked to certain people. They believe that all of this stuff confirms that people in general are really stupid and ignorant, and that they can't even figure out that eating all this junk food is unhealthy, even though that's what is pushed on them I would say on purpose, partly just to make profits. But anyway, bringing it all back to the meat situate. Oh, and just one other quick thing on my COVID thing. It's pretty clear right now that the mainstream media has had to start to really talk about the fact that this is a bioweapon. And what's interesting about that is that how long is it going to take the population to be able to figure out if that's a bioweapon that we're getting infected with? Actually, what is it? What have they done to that bioweapon other than just make it super transmissible? What kinds of things were spliced into that bioweapon? And when do those get activated, perhaps? We don't know. But so now that, a lot of people, I saw that maybe now 45% of the population in a poll feels that it probably was a bioweapon that leaked accidentally. They have to say accidentally, of course, but it does, and then you have to ask yourself the fact that they've used fraudulent testing and they're doing it, and I just want to say it right now. Right now, what they've done is because of this tremendous desire to get these so-called vaccines in everybody, they've lowered down the cycle threshold that they use on the PCR test. They've kind of lowered it down to 28. Well, when you lower it down to 28, you're not going to get a zillion false positives. But nobody talks about that. The population is generally ignorant. And when they want to jack it up again, which they probably will at some point, couple of months from now, all they have to do is use the level that they've been using, which is between 35 and I heard even as high as 45. Well, when it gets to 35 and 45, okay, it basically gives you it's a fraudulent test. They have therapeutics that are available. They made it so people wouldn't know about it or think they were no good. They basically are giving people now this tremendous push to force everybody to get vaccinated. But just if it's a bioweapon, what do you think the spike protein is they're putting in your body? Do you want a bioweapon spike protein in your body? Why would anybody, especially when you don't need it? And again, okay, and I couldn't control myself. I had to let it rip. But I'll go back to, the thing with the meat. I do think they're going to, raw meat. As they like to say in their little infomercials about the Great Reset, you're going to, you can eat bugs, you can eat seaweed, it'll be all tasty and everything like the Beyond Meat type products. And, and also you'll own nothing, but you'll be happy. It's so insulting, to look at those infomercials they're putting out. And so I think that, unfortunately, the meat eating issue, is going to be drowned out. But I do agree with you that if people could know that the meat was safe and you really understood what you were doing, it would be a healthy kind of an intake. Thank you for indulging me.
Thank you, Dan. I always love when you go into the vaccine discussion because it's so fascinating. Yeah, it's totally a bioweapon. It's a mess what's happening right now. It's really a clown show, but it's honestly a little bit interesting to watch this unfold from the outside. Yeah, we can only do so much as an individual or on an individual level to prepare. Anyhow, before we move into closing remarks, Ramses is up, and then, yeah, we'll start there.
I just wanted to comment on as a statistics thing, and that the population is much smaller than what we expect. So I remember I had a friend from Cairo who used to make fun of my home city and used to say that it's too small and this kind of stuff. And one day she decided to visit, and she took like a tourist pass, okay, over the beach. And after 5 minutes from the starting point of the bus, she spotted me. She found me on a beach with one of my friends. And then she called me and she was like, "You are on beach, right? At XYZ. I said, "Yes." And she kept saying that now you believe me that your town is just a two-room condo. So I asked her a question. What is the probability if you live in New York, for example, New York City or Los Angeles, or even Chicago, what is the probability that you are gonna meet someone of your acquaintances someday randomly on the street? You don't meet them daily, right? But it happens. Why? Because we usually tend to gather around in the downtown areas and in the city centers. But usually, if you look into the map, each city usually has its center, and surrounding this center is a vast, very big area of neighborhoods, which actually constitutes the most of the space of the city. So what we do here in statistics is that we, of course, in the third world, they don't meet everybody, okay? We apply a statistical method in order to get predictions. And the statistical methods really work very well because we apply them not only in social sciences like this, we apply them in all fields of science. And it's proven, it's mathematically proven that if you have random variable, then most probably the multiplication of 32 random variables at least will yield into a normal distribution. So all what you need to know here is actually the characteristics of the normal distribution, the mu and the sigma. And from there you can make predictions and you can make hypotheses and then apply the statistical methods that we know. So in my opinion, to claim that the predictions that we have right now is not correct because of the personal illusions that the world is small, I think it's kind of faulty. Like I would actually rather accept the statistics because they sound more logical and they are more objective. They don't rely on our personal experience. Last but not least, there is a researcher, okay, that already published a paper, I guess in August 2020, where she explained how coronavirus was developed in the lab, what it needs to be done in order to convert a coronavirus into COVID-19. And she describes the process step by step. However, the response of the scientific community was pretty silly and ridiculous. She's still publishing papers, but of course, she has to publish the papers just online on the internet on free journals because no peer-reviewed, respected journal will accept her paper because of the way our scientific consensus is formed, unfortunately. So I might be able to present her view one day and also present the response from the scientific community, which shows that scientists sometimes become horrible. And that's it. I unmuted, Megan.
Thank you for sharing, Ramses. Interesting points. And yeah, that could be another topic we talk about in the future, really talking about the population and yeah, going more into that. So great that you brought that up. Well, we will move into closing remarks now. And Daniel Tweed has some questions in the chat that he asked. So Daniel, we'll start with you and please ask your questions and share your closing remarks.
Yes, thanks. I agree there are many good aspects to not eating foods that have had the enzymes deactivated or destroyed, but your whole idea that everything in nature is good and that all bacteria are good and it's toxins that cause all the problems, it's equivalent to like flat eartherism. I'm sorry. I mean, it's like, do you want to get leprosy or cholera? I mean, there are just immense bodies of evidence that show that there are harmful bacteria. You can't, put out dangerous lies like all bacteria are good. That is just really a toxic thing to put into the information sphere. And I wish you would do some research, go on Wikipedia, just look at harmful bacteria article on Wikipedia, look at the bacteria article on Wikipedia. I know there's a few outliers that say, you know, they have interesting theories, but there's no body of credible evidence that supports what you're saying about bacteria and disease. So I beg you not to spread misleading information. And this is really to be lumped in the category of flat eartherism and, you know, other such topics. So other than that, I think there is a agenda among the elites that Daniel Bader is correct in identifying, that they want to draw down the global population by around 90%, because we are not living in a sustainable or even a regenerative way right now. But that's partly, as he says, a program of manufactured consent. You know, we are being mind controlled by electronic media to consume very non-regenerative substances and practices. And I think that's probably by design. And it behooves us all to become educated and informed and activist on this, because let's face it, we're condemning future generations to terrible fates if we don't. And that's my comment for today. Thanks again.
Thank you for sharing, Daniel. I will now ask Cesare if you have any closing remarks to share.
Certainly. Well, interesting to listen to, but I do want to invite you all to tomorrow's Citizen Assembly, where we're going to be discussing an idea that I'll be presenting. It's, well, the title of it is A Simple Argument for Veganism in the Context of Human Space Exploration. And the purpose of that is to explore the 4 logical possibilities of what a human encounter would look like with space aliens. In the event, the 4 possibilities are that the human is the vegan civilization, and so is the alien one, or both of them, or neither one of them is an alien vegan civilization, or that one but not the other is a vegan civilization. So we're going to be exploring those possibilities. Actually, the title of the events that I put out there is Interstellar Space. Don't go there unless you're vegan. So non-vegans beware before you travel outside of your solar system. So yeah, tomorrow, 7 p.m. Central Time in my room. Thank you.
Fascinating, Cesare. I definitely might attend that. I think it'd be an interesting discussion. And okay, so we'll go over to Dan Bader. Any closing remarks to share?
Yeah. You know, on the meat itself, again, I think that your argument of the raw meat containing nutritional value is very reasonable. But of course, as Daniel Tweed said, and the thing is that anybody would have to know that the consumption of the meat, if that's what somebody is doing, is safe. And so I just want to, you know, just informed consent, you know, if you want me to try some raw meat, you know, I want it to be safe. And as I said, when I was a kid growing up, I used to eat raw hamburger and it never bothered me. So that's as far as the meat goes. The other, I just want to add on to the depopulation issue. These individuals, you know, Bill Gates, James Lovelock, all of these very elite people who have tremendous scientific, technical capabilities and knowledge. They are assuming that the habitat for any species, plant or animal, is going to diminish very, very rapidly because of increases in the average global temperature. This is their premise, their assumption. It's what's behind it all. And they have concluded that in order for they themselves to survive in a kind of life that they're accustomed to and want, they have to depopulate the planet. And then to set up climate controlled, self-sufficient, high-tech, smart cities, kind of like a Singapore, a little city state, and to have them located in different places on the globe. And then they're going to let the planet supposedly regenerate in a natural fashion for however long that takes. And it should be discussed. The fact that it can't enter the public, forums is a huge problem. And it's, when people feel like their back's against the wall and they want to survive, so Megan, you gave the example, well, if you have two tribes and they're enemies and one overcomes the other tribe, they might cannibalize the people. That's brute survival kind of, culture. And that's the way that these elites are right now. They feel that the sand is going out of the hourglass very rapidly. And that what's going to happen is certain parts of the globe are going to become not suited for human life and other species. And then you're going to have these huge migrations of people up to places like the United States, Canada, up in Russia, the different places where it is still possible, it will be possible longer, probably, to be able to grow food. And everything is just going to go so dystopic. And I just think that what they're doing, and if they're not doing it, then it ought to be discussed, because they're pretty much laying it out there in a number of books that they write and what they talk about among themselves. And if you really want to get a sense of how, in a way, again, just put in, go ahead and Google or any search engine and just, put in, you won't own anything, but you're going to be happy. And you'll bring up, one or two of these infomercials they were running. They are very, very serious. And when they say, they're going to cut down the greenhouse gas emissions 50% by 2030. What do people imagine that's going to do to the cost of living? It's going to be through the roof. And a lot of things are just not going to be available that we're accustomed to having in terms of, products and everything. And this is just a massive kind of a thing going on. And as far as democracy goes, people in our country and other places they have really no input. So, I would just say that it's the depopulation is because they feel abrupt climate change is really ripping right now. And they don't know how many years really are going to be left with any kind of normalcy. But anybody who thinks that getting this COVID-19 vaccine, and then guess what? You'll be able to go back to some kind of normal life. Even if the vaccine wasn't harmful, as I believe it probably is, what's going to happen is you're not going to go back to any normal life, because they're going to, take down all the greenhouse gas emissions. And maybe that's what, should be done, or it actually should have been done, decades ago. But that's what we're in right now. And anything that anybody is thinking should be set in that kind of a context. They do want to depopulate. And the only way that they've ever come up with to depopulate the planet without getting unacceptable blowback, like using nuclear weapons or something, is through bioweapons and vaccines. And vaccines can be essentially bioweapons. You don't know what's in it. They don't want to tell you what's in this messenger RNA vaccine. But again, I just Okay, thank you. Can't help myself. And again, I just, I really appreciate these forums. I'm very glad to participate, and hopefully I can make that Cesare one tomorrow, because it seems like it's kind of building on maybe what we discussed today. Thank you.
Yes, definitely, Dan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And let's see, Stacey, would you like to share your closing remarks?
Yeah, thanks for another great discussion. I appreciate the way the raw meat diet discussion is evolving, and it does take more than one or two stabs at this kind of thing to really understand it. No pun intended. And yes, so our meat supply is not at the point where we can eat it raw now, just because it's so tainted and unhealthy. But I still believe, even if it is decided that eating raw meat is not natural and healthy, that our meat supply should be healthy enough to eat it raw at a minimum. And I look forward to the next one. And Cesare, your topic tomorrow night does sound great. So thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Great point, Stacey. I agree with you. And Ramses, anything you'd like to add to your closing remarks?
Well, I would say it was an awesome talk. Thank you, everybody, and great information. Sometimes I know that sometimes I talk like a Jewish, and sometimes I talk like Christian, sometimes I talk like an anti-Muslim. But in fact, I guess everybody knows that there is an atheist guy inside of me that's always telling me to only accept evidence. Okay, that's why I don't believe in conspiracies here. Conspiracies have been there, since Roman Empire. But as long as you can provide me with an evidence, that a tangible evidence that I can look at and understand that there's really a process going on, then in my opinion, it is just conspiracy. Some people are stupid, yes, and some people think that they can change the world and they want to depopulate or whatever. But come on, Cesare, for example, wants to invade other nations, right? So this doesn't mean that there is really a risk, and now there is a gang of people who are planning to invade North Korea right now at the moment. So in my opinion, that's why for the raw food, I'm gonna research it. There was interesting information shared today. Thank you so much, Megan. I believe most of it sounds logical. And of course, it's again a great source for reading. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Ramses. So my closing remarks are up, and I'm the last to go. So in response to Daniel's tweets, there is no such thing as bad bacteria. There really isn't. All bacteria is good. And I do believe that everything in nature is essentially good, because nature is a cycle that can't be changed. So it's better to live in line with nature than to try to change it, like Cesare had said. Now, there is no evidence of any bad bacteria. Even what you mentioned in the chat, let's see, what was the name of it again? So I can get the exact name, but it's the one that's in seafood.
The one that causes cholera, and they had to find sewage was going into the drinking water to stop that, and tens of thousands of people died in the 1800s till they figured that out. So don't be advocating things. Don't be a mass murderer here. Support good science, please.
Right. Well, but there was sewage in the water, right? So it's toxins. The water was toxic, and so bacteria then forms as a result to consume the toxins. So that's what happens with that. Any case where bacteria is linked to an illness, yes, bacteria has a part to do with disease. I'm not saying disease and bacteria are unrelated. What I'm saying is that disease is formulated by toxins, and then bacteria formulate or repopulate as a result to consume the cellular waste. So somebody might have toxins in their body, and then they have certain bacteria that multiplies to consume it. The medical industry notices the increase in bacteria and says that the bacteria is the issue, when in reality they are ignoring the fundamental cause of the toxin buildup. So every single case, even going down to, actually you brought up one time, what was it? It wasn't Oh, the Black Plague. Actually, I looked into it, and it was literally black metal poisoning. That was, again, I can send you a source on that as well. So yeah, all disease does come from toxins. Bacteria is a part of cleaning that up. You said that there's no tangible body of evidence, but I look at myself as evidence. I've been eating strictly raw food for the past 3 months. I've been eating raw food for way longer than that, like a year, but only raw food. And I've only gotten healthier. And there's 20,000 people around the world that also follow this diet and eat an abundance of bacteria, are also thriving in health. There's
I was
Oshness
not
Wonder.
referring to that.
Huh?
I was not referring to that, Megan. I was referring to the conspiracy theories that they are trying to depopulate us.
Yes, I was answering Daniel's.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, no, yeah, I meant, yeah, no, I know what you're saying. I feel you about the conspiracy theories, but Daniel had mentioned that there's no credible evidence to show that all bacteria is good. But I mean, yeah, I haven't. The only time I actually got sick was when I ate these mussels that were farm raised, and farm raised fish are given pesticides, so that happened. But there's also 20,000 people around the world or more that follow the primal diet, and I was hoping some of them would show up today, but they didn't. So hopefully next week they can come and share their experiences. A really great book, Daniel, to read is We Want to Live by Oshness Wonderplanet. I have a PDF too I can send you. And it's really amazing. He explains it way better than myself. And yeah, he also another body of evidence too are the primitive peoples who also eat raw meat and what's it called? And aren't sick or anything. So nature is the answer. Yeah, okay. So that's all I have to say to that. I am really grateful for this discussion today and how open-minded everyone is. And yeah, thanks for everyone for being here. And next week we are going to be doing the last and final part of the series, the raw meat diet, the healthiest diet on the planet. And that's literally what the next week one is about. That's the same title. So we're going to actually really go into specific case studies of people who've eaten raw meat, how their health has improved, and hopefully get to meet some other people and then more of the health benefits. And I also want to thank Joy for joining us. I hope that you got some value from listening to us, and thanks to our listeners as well. And Daniel says the examples I cite are anecdotal. Yes, but the book We Want to Live is not anecdotal. It is backed by lots of research and science. Oshness Wonderplanet was a really fascinating guy, and he's one of the only people who have really done a lot of research into this. Not many other people, other than Antoine Béchamp is another one, Daniel, you can look into, who actually has scientific evidence about this too. So last question, Cesare, how are you helping run the meeting? There was like a genuine question. I'm kidding. No, Cesare, I'm grateful for Cesare. Cesare, this meeting is here because Cesare has set it up, but the viewers can't see, but in the chat, Cesare asked a question, and I love how Ramses always subtly attacks Cesare. And she said, this is not your meeting. And Cesare said, I'm helping her run it. But how still? Zip. He told me to zip. Okay, we can talk about that afterwards. Well, thanks again to our viewers and listeners for being here. So this idea will be in Egora in a couple of weeks, but you should totally go to Egora and check out some of the other ideas in there. And you can find that at egora-ilp.org. And actually, I forgot to do something. Show of hands, who is in agreement with this idea now?
What are we agreeing to?
The idea that bacteria is beneficial for us and is our best friend. Okay, so about the same as before. Okay, great. You can for viewers and listeners, you can also find more information about our upcoming meetings. You should totally join us, and you can find it at facebook.com/groups/Citizen Assembly. Thank you.